So Patrick McAndrew, Hara, and you just listened to one of the most engaging, thought-provoking presentations that I've ever sat through. And that means 10,000 presentations that I've sat through. I thought it was terrific. You held the audience in total suspension for the time you're speaking. Is it something that you think the message that you're delivering, is it something that people are comfortable with? They come away with a better sense of confidence about themselves? How would you describe your presentation today to this audience?
I think the feedback that I've gotten that feels the most impactful is when people tell me that I've explained what's going on in their head. That people have come away sometimes saying that to me. And for us to work through things that we feel or that are problems, if we don't have words to put to it, if we don't have language to put to it, it can make us feel very stuck. So there is this sense that people feel of this. They have lots of different words: feeling distracted, feeling stuck, not feeling motivated, feeling tired. And we can use all of these terms, but if it can be explained and told in stories about why that's playing out, then I think it empowers people to realize, well, what can I do from this point? So my sense is that that's why a lot of the times the way that these things are communicated is not fully explaining why this is happening to us in a way that's compassionate, and instead it's telling people what they should do instead. And then it grates against them because they're saying, well, I'm trying to be more focused, I'm trying to get my life online, but it's a struggle.
This is an audience, structured settlement consultants. They operate all over the country. They're very, very competitive. They're triple A plus personalities. But they listened to what you had to say.
Yeah.
And you asked one question at one point, it got a little personal, and the audience went deadly silent. They're not going to talk about their personal issues in front of their competitors. But let me ask you a question. In a hyperkinetic, connected world, if professionals are working harder, longer, using more tools, more communication techniques, but they're feeling stressed about their own productivity. Is it because we're more connected that we're feeling less productive, or is it we're more distracted by the communication options that are out there that are making us less productive? Which is it?
Which does it sit between? So the two questions, can you ask me that just to frame that again?
Yeah, I'm thinking that when you have so many, you had one slide up with so many communication options, and I'm thinking I'm on many of myself, Twitter or X, LinkedIn. I have so many personalities of mine that are out there, but they take up a lot of my time.
Yeah.
And they're not me. I mean, I'm here. And when I do my best work, it's direct communication. But we have all these other communication options, information options, communication vehicles. Is all of that making us better at what we're supposed to be doing, or is it all distracting us from what we ought to be thinking about? Because I thought I heard you say, at some point, close your eyes, take a nap, play basketball. Just don't listen to iMessenger and all the time, because that's what that room is doing. They're thinking, I've got to be online, I've got to be communicating. That makes me more productive. And I thought your message was, not necessarily.
Yeah, so I understand now. I think it's, well, at the heart of this is that we need to move in and out of different states all of the time. So sometimes there's a necessity to think broadly about where the business is going, how I'm living my life, where I'm channeling my energy, my time, the kind of clients I'm working with. Sometimes I need to be interacting with them. Sometimes I need to be away and thinking about how to solve a problem, a big problem or a small problem in the moment. And then sometimes I need to be in the details. And the unfortunate thing is that we need to occupy all of those states, but we're often just stuck in one, which is very much in the details of the moment. So the irony of this moment in time is that the reason why we are distracted is because we are hyper-focused. We're always engaged, and the brain needs to be, and our body, not just our brain, our whole entity, needs to engage and disengage. And the disengagement, as we spoke about in the talk, which is that if I'm focused and deeply involved in something, and then I step away from it, but not onto my screen, not onto my phone, I step away from it to go for a walk, to shoot some basketball, to pet my dog, to take a few moments, the brain is actually processing everything that I was trying to think through right there, and it will help me to come up with a solution. And it also regulates my mood.
Makes perfect.
So
perfect
if I'm totally engaged, it actually destabilizes my mood. And when my mood is destabilized, I make worse decisions, I'm more reactive, I'm shooting from the hip. So I'm more and more entrenched in being in the details. And that's why I know that in this industry, a lot of people feel like they are constantly stuck in the details. And they tell themselves a story that if I can just get over this one thing, then I'll relax, then I'll have time. But that's a story where tomorrow never comes.
And I know these people well enough to know that they don't relax. They don't think of that through. Let me ask you a question. By investigating the productivity paradox, which I love that phrase, by the way, through science and the stories, you provide something you describe as the blueprint for sustainable achievement. What's the blueprint for sustainable achievement?
Well, I think it's about recognizing that the magic, everything that gets created is here. So this isn't something that I spoke about in the talk, but the word productivity comes from the Latin word productus, which is to bring forth. And in the past, what brought things forth was the system. It was the assembly line. The workers were just there as part of the assembly line. So they just had little tasks involved in a much bigger thing. Now, the assembly line is within us, if you can think of it that way. That actually I have to make sure that I manage myself, but it's not about doing more and more and more and more. It's about this toggle and this dance between engaging and disengaging, because the paradox is that we've been given so much choice, but in being given so much choice, you have to learn how to establish boundaries. And it's that paradigm between the two, that I know what I want and I can be fully engaged in it. And if you don't know what you want, you can become overwhelmed by all of the tools that we have.
So can you describe for me or explain to me, what is the science behind efforts to align effort with efficiency?
To align effort with efficiency? So really it's about recognizing that our attention is like this sticky substance. So whenever I want to focus on something, I won't get it straight away. It could take 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending on how engaged, how much I care about it. So by providing space, say for 60 minutes, 70 minutes, 75 minutes, to actually commit to a thing that I need to do, I'm being much more efficient. But if I'm trying to condense it down to try and squeeze this thing out, which is going to take time to think through things, and I'm trying to do it in 20 minutes and squeeze it in between 2 video calls, it's not going to get done.
So would you describe multitasking as a heightened sense of productivity, or is it masking as productivity?
Well, it depends. It depends how mentally challenging the task is.
Right.
So if it's an easy task that I need to just tick something off, and it's let's say very administrative, not much of a thought process, we can kind of jump between these things and get a lot done. So at times of the day, we need to be deeply present in what we're doing, and then at times of the day, we just need to be responsive to everything that's coming in at us. And it's not one or the other, because we have to acknowledge that we do have these phones, we do have people who expect that they're going to hear from us, but are we going to allow that to happen for the 18 hours of the day that we're awake, or the 16 hours that we're awake, or are we going to limit that to a window of time where I'm going to be very available to everybody who needs me, and then in other windows I'm going to be deeply involved in the work that I need to do and the team that I need to communicate with?
I understand. That makes perfect sense. I've been described by many people that know me well as that I do my best thinking when I'm talking. Now, I know that's a criticism, but I've come to recognize that I will focus on a task at hand, and I will develop a response, and then I will build on my knowledge base. But I do know that by myself, if I'm on my phone, taking a message, responding, doing an email, I'm not doing anything well. I'm getting things done, but I look back on it, and multitasking, from my perspective, is taking on a lot of small pieces and assignments, but not delivering on any of them adequately. So focusing in on a task at hand makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and just to add to that then as well, Eric, I think a lot of people find their value in being a taskmaster. So they think that just like blitzing through the to-do list. But if you're running your own business and you're only trying to be a taskmaster, your business's growth is going to be very slow. I think of it like a dishwasher. So I used to work in restaurants. The dishwasher is a very important role in the restaurant. If we don't have a good dishwasher, we're not going to be able to clean enough dishes to make the next meal.
Perfect point.
But if you are simply just trying to become a more efficient dishwasher, You'll never learn the skills of becoming a great cook and a great restaurateur. And when you run your own business, you need to be all roles within the restaurant, metaphorically speaking. But if you're only trying to be a great dishwasher, well, the growth of the business is going to be limited. You're going to just look for small tasks to get done.
Can you explain why you believe the greatest challenge isn't motivation or desire, but the ability to channel motivation, desire into reality? Something you've defined as our fragmented attention. I love your phraseology, by the way. It focuses the mind. And I read this and I thought, what does Patrick mean by our fragmented attention? And I've thought about it a lot, and I think I know, but what is your response to that?
Well, I used to teach speed reading workshops. I used to travel around the country doing this, and I was in high schools, I was in colleges, I was in corporate boardrooms, and I saw people with so much drive and ambition everywhere I went, and they knew what they wanted to some degree, but so many of them struggled to actually bring it into action. And the reason being was because it was being able to show up the way that they wanted to show up. There's often a great difference between my idea of myself and the reality of how I live this life. And if we can bring them closer together, we feel more harmonious. If they're very far apart, it feels like a lot of tension inside. And nobody teaches us how to actually have ownership over our attention, how to focus. This thing that we are expected to do from school, to focus, to be focused and engaged. Nobody ever teaches that. It's this expectation that we have of each other that this should just be in you, but it's not something that's ever developed.
I had the sense while I was listening to you that if you had had that same session with 200 individuals around a table, but one person, you would have gotten a different response. You would have gotten people opening up to you to talk to you about their fears, their concerns, their issues, their challenges. In a group like this, or in any group when you've met with corporate leaders, how do you work with leaders, multiple, or teams to get them to focus on better improvements, greater productivity? Can the team come up with that and be responsive, or do you need to focus in on the team leader at one-on-one with you, or can you do it with a larger group?
Yeah, I can do it with the large group. I'm with the team leader, but the team leader understanding this way of seeing the world
into it all
is so important. You know, for example, there's an organization that I've done a lot of work with, many of their teams, but the people who make the decisions on the technologies that they use is the IT team. I haven't done any work with them. So they are trying to implement a lot of the practices that we teach, but then the IT team came and introduced an in-house text messaging app. So they just added a new platform so that they now have Microsoft Teams, email, text message, phone calls, LinkedIn, and an in-house text messaging service. So they're being spread across 6 different lines of communication with their people. And they were like, it demoralizes them because they think, I want to implement these things to remove the noise and to have space to actually interact with people deeply. And another thing that I'll just add to this is that I see in a lot of corporate cultures that the communication that happens through these instant messages can actually really reduce the quality of the connection between people. I see it as like teenage dating, where teenagers can meet each other online and send like messages back and forth for months, and then they meet up in person and it's all very awkward because they got to know each other very well through sending emojis and texts, but it's a whole different ballgame when you meet in person. The same thing is happening in companies because I get to be there at these corporate events when they meet for the first time once a year. And they express to me that it's difficult, it's awkward, it's not so easy, but yet I'm messaging you on Microsoft Teams like 15 times a day. So it's worth recognizing that high context information, like communication like you and I are having now, is full of friction. And that friction is very important because it's how we get to know to relate and understand each other.
But if you in your profession and in my profession, communication is key. And the ability to communicate electronically, instantaneously, is fabulous. It makes work easier from my perspective. It makes communication smarter, but it can become overwhelming and be destructive at times. But can you describe a small habit adjustment that you have made in your interactions with people that have helped improve your focus and recharge your capacity?
Yeah, in my interactions with people, something that's related to this, well, a huge thing that's helped a ton is by getting an alarm clock. It's a very basic thing, but it actually sets you on a trajectory of immense change. Such a basic practice. But it was only when I realized I never chose for my phone to be my alarm clock. It just happened. And I ended up getting the same alarm clock that my father had, that I saw him using when I was a child. And what that did is it allowed me to create this distance and this space from myself, from the phone in the morning. So I actually gained some ownership over my day. And that led to huge changes in myself because I saw that I could extend this space further and further and further so that I can be using the tool for everything that it has to offer me, but I'm not succumb to it. It doesn't have a hold over me.
I thought it was ingenious when you said getting an alarm clock, but then you followed up and said, and just have a button on top. You push it, no snooze button,
Right.
no radio. Don't make it a multifunction.
No.
It's an alarm clock.
Just one thing, yeah. Let's think about the washing machine. The washing machine is a great invention because it has one purpose. Yeah.
You describe the loop of distraction as heavy media multitasking. It changes your brain's orientation to constantly anticipate distractions, negatively affecting performance and under high stress conditions. How do individual workers, and I know you've consulted with quite a few of them, address this loop of distraction?
It's worth recognizing that all of this comes from a feeling inside. So it's the feeling that creates the behavior. So the tools, many of them are based on engagement. They're trying to make you as engaging as possible. So just to explain this slightly, there's 4 steps to this. The first step is a trigger. So I triggered either by a notification, like a buzz or a sound. This is how they get you to use the product. But eventually, the trigger becomes internal. I don't even need a notification. Just if I feel bored or alone or anxious or uncertain, then I take the action, which is to check my email. Then I go and I see that there is a nasty email or a good email or a new deal, and that gives me this sense of this excitement. It's good that I checked because now I knew straight away. And then the 4th step is that I become more invested in this process, so I do it more. So the first thing that sets it all off is the feeling in your body. You know, it's just like if you have...
It is a physical feeling.
It's a physical feeling. And you know what it's like after if you're a regular dessert eater and you want to stop eating dessert, what happens is that you so associate this feeling of being sort of full with the next thing, which is the next sweet treat. And what has to happen is that you just become comfortable with that sort of full feeling and that it doesn't require a dessert. And then after 2 or 3 or 5 days, I don't need a dessert. It's okay, I'm comfortable with that feeling. What's happened is for a lot of us that as soon as I feel this anxiousness or I feel like I can't focus on something because I feel like my mind is a bit fatigued, I go for the next nearest stimulant or easeful treat, which is to pick up my phone, and that gets me caught in this loop of distraction because what's driving it is the feeling inside my body, which is associated to this action. So if you can become more aware of the feeling and choose a different response, you've created a new path of your life.
Makes perfect sense. And now I understand the loop. I noticed with this group, and they were all my bosses, they all have my email address, and they all have my cell phone number. They all have direct access to me. And they expect direct responses. They want me to be that responsive. And some of them are, quite frankly, obnoxious. I hope you're listening to this spot, because they call, email first thing in the morning. They want an answer in 15 minutes. Why didn't I respond? Where's my... So it's an instant expectation of responsiveness, when in fact, if I'm responding to all these people all day long, I'm not doing my job, which is representing them with Congress or something else. How do you put up the boundaries, not just me, but how do you establish the boundaries so that you can think through a problem, you can go for a walk? How do you do that?
Well, first of all, you can explicitly say to them, I'm not available or checking my phone before this hour, so please don't expect a response from me. That's one thing. Very important to do. We do that in physical life. If somebody gets too close into my space, hey, step back, what are you doing? Same thing we can do in the virtual space. It's all communication. But what's most interesting is this way of communicating is so new. So we haven't inherited ways from our parents or our teachers on how to deal with this. So we have to figure it and allow ourselves to make decisions ourselves. The second thing is, let's say, for example, this is an example of an IT leader who I spoke with, who said, I need to be available all the time in case there are any things that go wrong on the server because it needs to be brought up to me so that somebody can message me. So I cannot be off my phone. And I said, well, let's look at it this way. Imagine 3 mornings a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you wanted to give yourself time to actually focus in on the things that need to be done. You tell people that on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays before 11:30, my partner, my assistant, my second in command will be the one receiving these messages, or you have an automated response in your email. Then they're like, oh, okay, well, I tried, but now I understand where the boundary is. I'm going to send a message at this time. And you've created that space.
So it takes the initiative on the individual to set those boundaries, just as you would in the physical world.
Absolutely.
Makes perfect sense. You encourage people to own their attention, their energy, own their focus. Can you explain how you're helping ambitious professionals like the structured settlements people and the Pacific Life people and entrepreneurs and others to get out of the daily grind and get back in control of their own minds, their own space? How have you done that successfully?
Well, we all grew up with parents whose more than likely their hard work was a physical expression of work, moving, picking up stuff, doing hard labor. I'm not saying that everybody who's listening to this has had this, but that's what we've inherited. And if it wasn't from them, we saw it from our grandparents. So that's our view of what hard work is. And we find meaning in showing that we can work hard and that we can pour ourselves into our work. And for many of us, we feel that we need to perpetuate that cycle, that we can show and display that I'm busy and I'm working hard. But in today's world, that will work against you because we're no longer bricklayers. That the more bricks you lay, the more you earn, the better work you do. In fact, you can cut through it all and you can get a few deals or make a few decisions, and you can do that in way less hours than everybody else. But if you're the person who thinks that your value is being responsive and being on the phone all the time, you'll be stuck. You'll be stuck at a certain layer of performance. And anybody who I've met or who I know who's truly great at their game understands this. They understand that there are different levels of performance. And I need to move in and out of these different levels of performance each and every day. Sometimes I'm thinking deeply, some days I'm processing, some moments I'm solving problems, sometimes I'm responding, but I'm not doing all of them at the same time. And when you own that, that's what owning your attention and your energy is about, because it's the internal stuff which dictates what we create externally nowadays. Back in the day, it wasn't about that. If you were sore, tired, hungover, you just got up and went to work and you did the things that had to be done in front of you. Now, it's not right in front of us. It's actually that we have to block it out and focus on what's important, because there's 15 things that we could attend to. So that's where it is, because when you're more clear and focused, the name of the game is understanding what to block out and what to dive into. And that's a skill that needs to be developed.
When I was getting ready to meet with you and do this podcast interview, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, but I think I now know the answer, is what is superpower of focus? Because I think you are a superpower of focus.
Well, what I don't think it is being tunnel visioned all the time. What I hope, when I use this word focus, I'm using it because it relates to people. But what I want to offer to people is that you can show up as you need to be in each and every moment. So if you need to be very present and calm with somebody, you can be very present and calm. If you need to be dialed in and focused to get something done, you can do it. If you need to, that you can be present in each and every moment and you can organize yourself. The thing that I really want to help people with is that if you know what you want, that you can organize yourself to be the way you need to be to get it done. That's what I consider focus to be. It's not one way of being, but it's able to be all ways of being whenever you need it.
Excellent, makes perfect sense. I want to ask you a question. I want you to take it seriously because I'm completely interested in this subject. You have an engaging accent. It's Scottish.
Irish.
Irish. I apologize. It's Irish. And it's engaging in such a way that it brings you in, me as an American without an accent, I hope. But I hear it, and I assume you're smart. Does that make sense to you? You have this accent, it's engaging, but it makes me think you're a lot smarter than I am, and I'm listening to you like some sage guidance. I couldn't make it up. I thought it was fabulous the way you presented the issues, and your lilt comes out right at appropriate moments to attract even more attention to what you're saying.
Well, I'm lucky. I was born with it, so it's not something I just put on a few days ago, and I'm grateful for it. I must say, I feel incredibly fortunate to be Irish and in this country. I think we get a lot of great fortune, and doors are opened, and people are very warm and welcoming to us because of who we are as a people, and my carrier of that is my accent. So I'm grateful for it. I am.
Well, we are grateful for you to be here with us, Patrick McAndrew. I thought it was fabulous. Pacific Life deserves an enormous thanks on our part to have you on our program. I thought your presentation was just spectacular. I hope people that listen to this podcast are as moved by you and your thoughts and your focus as we all were. And I want to thank you very much for your time.
And thank you. And I want to thank NSSTA as well, because the questions that you shared to me before were the most thoughtful questions I have received.
What was the sex comment? I couldn't remember. What did you say it was?
Oh, I said a simmering, so I talked about being caught at a simmering 6, and he said I'm a simmering 6, and it sounded like he said I'm a simmering sex. And then he said,
we're not going to tell you who said that. But anyway, it brought the house down. Patrick, thank you very,
so
very
much.
much.
Pleasure to be here.